Whispering Woods is so close to officially opening Predator Ridge, and just in time as cooler weather approaches. It also means it's time to say goodbye to the migratory butterflies, and the Haven is celebrating with an all-ages butterfly release event. Anna Kingston, the zoo's educator, hands out education kits to the youngest children, while Genevieve Joyce collects opinions and votes about animals guests would like to see in the future. Meanwhile, Imogen Chen and Antonia Garcia are hard at work designing new aviaries for a host of injured birds arriving from another zoo. They can't be released to the wild but could make for amazing ambassador species. And Wesley Parsons, along with the unlikely company of Arthur Joyce, wrangle a pair of wild boars terrorizing a playground. They will be much safer here. Welcome back to Whispering Woods Wildlife Haven. Hey everyone, Sparrow here. It's been a busy week or two. I honestly don't even remember when the last episode was because time just doesn't seem to exist right now. But as you could see, I did do a little bit of planning ahead of time just to make this video not quite as long and also to give me a little bit more peace of mind in my busy schedule. So we are going to be filling in this middle space between the wolves and the beaver and raccoon enclosure. And what's on that other side? Wolverines, the back of the wolverine enclosure. So this massive space here was originally going to be a habitat, but it didn't quite fit the theme of this valley. So what we're going to be putting in here instead is predators of the skies. And that's going to be a bunch of predatory birds that live in the UK. And they have some sort of connection to the UK. I will make sure to talk about that just a little bit later in the video. But these aviaries are highly inspired by the Northumberland Zoo. They have a YouTube channel. If you haven't watched any of their videos, definitely go check them out. They recently did a tour. It was a 4-part series of their entire zoo, and it was so fun to see all of the animals and all of the structures and then a bunch of the backstages as well. So these aviaries are highly inspired by Northumberland Zoo. I'm creating a mesh window first, and then also going to create just a plank wall on the side. These are the Australian planks. I'm not sure if I like the light color. I wish they were recolorable because I really like the texture, but we're just gonna go with it. So this aviary here is going to house 2 different types of hawks, and I'm just building that up using those pieces. Very heavy piece count because every plank is individual, obviously. We also do have a restroom on this side because I realized I was very much neglecting guest needs, and we may need to have an episode about just taking care of guests at one point because there is a lot of infrastructure that is missing that we're gonna have to add. So let me know if that's something you're interested in, or if I should just do that in the meantime. Not that I have a lot of time to fill these days because I'm usually busy planning other things. This aviary on this side is going to house 2 different types of owls. I love owls. They're some of my favorite animals. I did quite a bit of research about the different species of owls and hawks and eagles and all the birds in the UK before this episode, and I just kind of picked the ones that, first of all, I like the most, and also the ones that I thought worked from a conservation perspective. The third aviary is going to be a little bit larger. This one is going to house the white-tailed eagle, which is an eagle that is found across Europe and parts of Asia, I believe. And we're going to make it a little bit taller, which is why I'm extending the mesh at the top. And then we're just going to run that all the way around the plan. Even though I didn't quite make the enclosures the same size as I had originally planned. And because I suck at planning ahead, I had to go back and put some trim on the top of the other 2 aviaries to match the eagle one. Sometimes I just don't come up with these things until later into the build process, and then I find myself going back and adding all of these details that could have just been there initially. So in the owl aviary, I'm going to hide a keeper hut. Not that these animals need a keeper hut. They are building piece animals, so they won't need it, but the wolverine, the lynx, and then the animals coming in the next section could potentially make good use of that, or their keepers could, rather. And once more, because these are shorter aviaries, I'm looking for foliage that will fit into them. Ended up going with a mix of Scots pine and then some of the shorter holly trees, just sinking them into the ground. This one created a nice backdrop. And then the beech trees usually make pretty good bushes. The oak sapling works pretty well. The Scots pine saplings work really, really well because they are quite small. And a lot of the dead trees, if you sink them into the ground, they don't look too strange. So there's the Scots pine, the Himalayan pine, the white birch, cherry blossom, and the yellow ipe. So you kind of have one for each continent, except for Africa, I believe. And then of course you can always decorate with a bunch of fallen trees and rocks and other foliage. So I'm just kind of putting out those initial bones of each aviary before turning my attention to this one with the eagle. This is the first one we're going to complete. It was the last structure that we built, but we're going to fill it out first because it is the biggest one. Might as well check it off our list. So here is our white-tailed eagle. All of the prop birds in this episode are made by Captain Callum. They are absolutely amazing, look so beautiful. And as we fill in this enclosure with some fig trees as bushes and some flowers, and then I'm gonna just terrain paint all around that. I like to put my short grass down first and then add in some long grass. And then any places that I feel like the keepers would be walking, I'm just gonna outline with soil and then add a little bit of sand just for a few lighter patches. And then of course, gonna put in some grass. Buffalo grass is my go-to, but the Yorkshire fog grass does also work for Europe, which I've been using in a lot of the other enclosures. And there we go, our white-tailed eagle aviary is basically complete, and we can go to the other ones. So this is just a quick montage. It's basically the same thing that I was doing in the eagle aviary. Just a bunch of rock work, foliage getting put down, trees being felled, and then we're also going to add these feeding dishes to each one. This is just a super simple build with a log piece and then one of the large water bowls. I believe the first time I saw this was in an aviary bird prop pack by Jaguar X, so definitely check that one out as well. And then because I decided I like pain, I decided that these should also have some mesh coverings on top, just like the wolverine and the lynx enclosures. But these ones, I wanted to make it look like they were actually draped over, so it's not a straight line from the top of the pole down to the edge. It's a little bit curved. I'm not meshing it over because, again, I only have so much time during the week, especially now that I'm in the classroom every single day and having to plan all of my lessons. But this will still give the illusion of there being mesh over top of the aviary, which is also something you would see in a zoo. So I don't want to just give it flat roofs. And there's also the added annoyance that most of the trees are taller than this building, which means that a flat roof would cut most of them off. So we are going to do the raised roof. And once I have that first line, I'm going to rotate it. We're just going to do 8 of them in each aviary, so every 45 degrees. I just have to adjust those copied sections so that they actually meet up with the wall. This was surprisingly, maybe not easy, but it didn't take as long as I thought it would. And once that's done, I will recolor them so that we have a complete aviary. Now onto our guest amenities. These bathrooms on the side, I'm going to give them a shingle roof so that they match the rest of the zoo so far. And then that same plank wall along the outside, we'll slap some doors on there in a little bit. And then on the outside, I'm just placing down a bunch of rocks and we'll add some foliage just to make it look a little bit nicer, a little bit more inviting. And in this big center area, this is really the star of the show. This is where the Raptor shows are going to happen. Usually whenever there are birds of prey in a zoo, they will do raptor talks where they talk about them, or they will fly the birds. So they might have someone who is trained in falconry and they'll be able to fly them as a bird show. So the species that we have at this zoo are the white-tailed eagle, we have the hen harrier, the red kite, and the Eurasian eagle owl, and the European tawny owl. So all of these I picked on purpose because they each kind of have a story to go with the location of Whispering Woods. The white-tailed eagle was hunted to extinction in the UK during the early 20th century, and then it was later reintroduced. So it's definitely a species that is on the list to watch out for. We want to educate people about it so that it doesn't go extinct again. The hen harrier is named for its prey, which is usually free-roaming fowl, and that means that it's hunted by farmers quite often. So a few nests are found in the UK now, though Northumberland is the current key stronghold for breeding pairs. And they are not allowed to be hunted, but because of their hunting habits, it makes them a target for farmers. The red kite was on the brink of extinction just a few decades ago, but now they have about 6,000 pairs in the UK, so it is coming back, and we do want to let people know that they should be watching out for that as well. The Eurasian eagle owl is one of the largest species of owls. It was once also extinct in the UK. Breeding is now sporadically recorded in the wild, especially in the northern UK, but it's not very often seen. The Eurasian eagle owl is also quite solitary and a little bit secretive, so that could also be a reason why not many of them have been seen. And the final one, the European tawny owl, is actually common in the wild, but it was just so cute, and having a smaller owl is adorable. So the Haven takes in owls that have been orphaned or hurt, as it does with various other animals. Now that you've learned a little bit more about these birds of prey, as you would if you were actually attending one of these shows, we're going to build up this seating area with some corrugated metal pieces and some concrete, and then we're going to give it some girders as supports and also a corrugated roof. Behind the seating, as you've probably seen, are a few stands. So we do have a drink stand, a food stand, and a souvenir stand, which we haven't had one of those yet. There is a souvenir shop in the works. I just don't know when it will actually be ready. This is mostly just to take care of guest needs because there have been quite a few unhappy guests with the energy levels and thirst because it is quite warm right now. I think it's like 31 degrees Celsius as I was recording this speed build. So we do want to make sure that they are also taken care of, even though I obviously care a lot more about the animals. But that's not all for today's episode. Once that space has been filled in, there was also one other big space to fill in, and that is between the badger, the red deer, and the lynx enclosures. This enclosure up here is going to house the wild boar. Thank you for the suggestion on the previous video. I don't remember who commented it, but it was an amazing suggestion. Wild boars are not necessarily endangered, but they are not particularly well received by a lot of people because they are actually quite dangerous, and there have been quite a few wild boar attacks in Europe recently. So this would be an opportunity for the Haven to educate people about wild boars, what to do if you see one in the wild, how to get away from them if need be, but also just to educate people about the fact that, hey, maybe they're not so bad after all. There is our first wild boar. Her name is Josie. That's how she came from the trade center, and I'm just making sure that she can get out of her pen at the back. I love these heat maps. I don't know how people did it without these heat maps beforehand. I guess just pressing play and making sure that the animal could walk through, but that seems like such an annoyance. And once that's been figured out, I'm going to place down some enrichment items. So the enclosure itself is modeled after a UK park. It's called Wildwood Discovery. It's not an exact replica, obviously, but I did use quite a few items from that enclosure, including this kind of, it's not really a moat, it's kind of like a decline in the ground right in front of the fence. And then that will also be filled with a bunch of dead branches, which I unfortunately did not hit record when I was doing that, but those branches are from a wonderful steam workshop, so make sure to check it out in the link down below if you're in need of dead branches. And then also filled with some rocks. Here we can see me sinking the rocks into the ground and all those branches I had placed, along with the Caesar Creates rock piles. And once more foliage. This time I'm using the blackthorn bushes. I don't use them very often. The color is a little bit off to me, but there you could see my foliage palette for this enclosure. Lots of similar plants to all of the other ones. I'm only going to show a few snippets of planting up this enclosure because really it's maybe not all the same, but it's a very similar technique to my usual style. Around this pond next to the sprinkler, I'm going to place a bunch of hosta just to make it a little bit more green. And then I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to use this red oak grass, but it wasn't quite working for me. I did want the enclosure to have more of a muddy feel, but it wasn't working. So I did end up using Yorkshire foggrass around the planted areas, and I think that actually turned out pretty well. Some finishing details in the backstage area. Here we have some windows because it was quite dark in here and the breeze block walls are honestly kind of boring. So I've placed those in there. It's a double paned window. We're going to put down some drains on the floor just in case. And then also grunge it up. Over top of that, we're putting a green roof. And on top of these tiles, I'm just going to place down even more Yorkshire foggrass because why not? And just when I thought I was done, I decided, hey, we probably need a guest barrier as well. So here is the fence I'm placing down. And then also I decided that one detail was going to bother me, so I had to go back and put in stoppers on either side. And finally, our education board. This is the same education board as the fox and the badger. I'm just making it a little bit different. And then some final planting of in-between areas. And I think we're ready to see the final results. Thank you so much for watching. Leave me a like, a comment, and subscribe to get a notification of the full tour of Predator Ridge in 2 weeks. See you next time. Bye.